The animation opens on the rooftop of a building where a girl stands playing a magical violin. Her name is E, and she's using the magic from the violin to make a flowering plant grow. E is so excited to see that her magic worked, but she's distracted by her grandmother calling for her. As a result of this distraction, the plant stops blooming and dies off. She is disappointed at what just happened, and two of her friends appear from their hiding and offer words of encouragement to her. E wonders aloud about why she can't effectively carry out magic like one of their friends, a yeti named E. Soon they are interrupted by E's grandmother, Nai, who calls her to assist in some chores. E packs her violin in its case and runs off the roof into the building to meet Nai. When they leave, a petal from the dead plant containing magic begins to float and leaves the building. Inside the building, E and her friends help Nai and her mom carry some kitchen equipment to her mom's restaurant. When they arrive at the restaurant, they see the old cooker which was about to be replaced. This restaurant is new, so E and her friends are instructed to put the furniture in order. While arranging the restaurant to prepare it, Yi, Jin, and Peng carry out the former cooker. Soon they hear a sound and they wonder where it came from. They look into the cooker and see a bird inside. E and her friends plan to bring the bird out of the cooker, so they all go out to look for different tools to carry out this plan. Inside the restaurant, E's mom drops some flyers and instructs her daughter to share them later in the day. E and her friends try to bring out the birds thanks to her magic violin, which successfully brings out the bird. Peng attempts to catch it with a bag, but the bird runs and flies up to a scaffold. The bird is scared, so he climbs to the bird and speaks softly to it, after which he puts it in a bag. They take the bird to the rooftop and let it out of the bag to allow it to fly away, but the bird doesn't fly. Peng makes a demonstrates to tell the bird to fly, but this gets the bird scared instead, and it begins to run around the rooftop. He tries to use her magic to stop it from running, but the magic doesn't work effectively as she hasn't perfected her use of it. Suddenly, the sun reflects on the rooftop and the bird runs towards it and starts transforming from a normal bird to a magical one. As it attempts to fly, the sun is covered by a ball of clouds, and this makes the bird weak. Yi, Jin, and Peng are frustrated at this occurrence but soon notice a cloud-like figure flying toward them. They see their friend, Everest, a magical yeti, floating on a cloud towards them. He lands on the rooftop and Yi, Jin, and Peng hug him, telling him that he came at the right time. They show him the bird and ask him to help them, and he magically communicates with the bird, who reveals that it has no home, and he decides that they'd build a home for the bird. They are interrupted by the arrival of Yi's grandmother, and they rush to hide Everest and the bird. Nai informs the children that food is ready, calling them into the restaurant, after which she leaves and he puts the bird in Everest's care and they leave. While eating with her family and friends, Yi sees Everest signal to her from the window, so she heads out with Jin and Peng. They go to the rooftop and see that the bird has fallen ill, and they think of ways to help the bird. He suddenly has an idea and runs off the roof and comes back with a storybook. This book contains a story about the bird and reveals that it gets power from the sun. Everest takes them all to the top of the sun scraper across the road, so they would keep the bird there to build its nest and flourish. They lose balance on the cloud and fall, but the yeti hold onto a beam, holding them. They finally get to stay on the beam and tell Everest to take the bird to the top of the building. As he does so, the rope holding the beam cuts and they all fall, heading toward the ground. Everest sees this and uses his magic to hold them from falling, but couldn't reach Yi as she falls to the ground. He growls in frustration and suddenly, the bird transforms as it feels the sun and flies down to rescue the girl. She rescues Yi and brings her back to her friends, who happily thank her. The top of the skyscraper doesn't have enough plants for the bird, so Yi tries to play her violin to grow them. She asks Everest for assistance as she plays the violin, and together, their magic makes plants sprout and blossom. He and her friends say their goodbyes to the bird and leave the skyscraper on a cloud created by Everest. As they float towards her home, he sees the restaurant and remembers that she didn't share the flyers, so Everest makes a symbol out of the clouds, which makes people patronize the restaurant. Later, he plays the magical violin on the rooftop and several magical creatures in different houses shine their light in the darkness in response to the music. The next morning he is woken up by Jin and Peng, who are surprised that she spent the night with Everest. She tells them that she stayed awake through the night playing her violin and waiting for any magical creature that would come by. Peng notifies Yi that the reason the animals aren't coming is that she needs to change the song she's playing. So, they try different songs, but no magical creatures come along. They soon notice that Everest's temperature is high, which affects him, so they had to come up with a plan. They plan to take him into the storage room at Yi's family's restaurant, so he'll cool off. Furthermore, they send Peng into the restaurant to cause a distraction, so he goes in to buy food. Everest, and Jin soon gain entrance into the restaurant and take the Yeti into the storage room for it to regulate his temperature. Afterward, they return to the rooftop with Everest, who is feeling better than before. Jin tells Yi that Everest's recovery is temporary and that they would need to find somewhere permanently cold to always regulate his temperature. He suggests Mr. Burnish, a former animal captor and scientist who used to conduct experiments on animals. He immediately rejects this suggestion, stating that Mr. Burnish had hurt Everest in the past, but Jin tells her that he's a changed man, and they also have no other options. She reluctantly agrees, and they all sneak Everest to Mr. Burnish's place. Arriving there, the scientist refuses to help them, stating that he fears what he could do to Everest since he hasn't completely overcome his animal addiction. He pleads for a while, after which she gives up, and they all realize that Everest has disappeared. They run frantically around the streets looking for him, and they do this until it becomes dark. He soon gets an idea of where he would be and tells her friends to follow her, which they do. They soon find Everest touching a picture of the cold mountains, wishing for a cold environment to be. He is feeble and his life and health are in a critical condition. Seeing Everest in this condition gets Yi heartbroken, and she painfully decides that the only way to help Everest is to send him back. They arrive at the rooftop and he asks the Yeti to try to make a cloud that would take him home, which he tries but proves futile because he has no strength to hold the magic. He plays her violin in an attempt to try to reduce the pain Everest is feeling, and this helps to temporarily relieve him of the pain. As they think of the next plan to carry out, they are interrupted by the arrival of Mr. Burnish and his pet mouse. Mr. Burnish reveals to them that he felt guilty for turning them away, so he decided to make a permanent cold room for Everest. The Yeti is a bit paranoid but later enters the cooling chamber, which regulates his temperature. Everest comes out feeling very excited and he hugs Mr. Burnish. The scientist also gives Jin and Peng some tech gadgets to enable them to find magical creatures easier. They are all interrupted by the magic bird, who comes to inform them that a magical creature is coming. The ground begins to tremble, and they all stand on the rooftop waiting for the magical creature to come to them. This tremor happens for some time, but there isn't any magical creature in sight, so Jin suggests that they spread out into the town to search for it. While on her search, Yi decides to use her violin to summon the creature, and as she plays, a huge fish flies out of the sewers into the air and enters back. Yi and her friends enter the sewers where they meet the fish who communicate with them through Everest that its dam is broken. Yi tried to fix the damage with her magic, but it gets worse, and the dam gets broken and water starts flowing into the sewers. They all run out of the sewers back to the rooftop where Mr. Burnish still is, and they ask him for solutions to the existing problem. He checks his system and tells them that the dam broke because a pearl which held it together was stolen. They later realize that the pearl was taken to a museum, which announced that it was going to be on exhibition in days to come. So, the team decides to retrieve the pearl from the museum and return it to the dam. At the museum, they keep Peng on the lookout while they get to where the pearl is being kept. They find it, but Jin notices with his tech glasses that there are hidden security lasers around the pearl. So, he goes to get it while being directed by Jin on how to dodge the lasers. Back in the town, the water from the dam has started flowing out of the sewers and the town is risking flooding. He successfully retrieves the pearl and tosses it to Peng, who takes it away with his rocker boots. The magic fish picks him up in the air and flies him into the sewer, where he fixes the pearl into its hole where it rightly belongs. The water dries up, and the town is saved from flooding. Another day, while Yi, Peng, and Jin are at the restaurant, Nai comes in and informs them that the candy seller in the town has closed his shop, and she intends to sell candies in the restaurant as well, but someone has been stealing her candies. Nai decides to repair the old camera in the restaurant so she would catch the thief. The next day, she hands the camera to Yi to help her watch who stole her candies, and he sees that Everest is the thief. She can't let her grandma see the video, so she and her friends plan to make a different video with Peng as the thief. After they are done shooting, they head out of the restaurant, leaving Peng, who gobbles down an entire bag of sugar. He is overstuffed and bloated, so he falls to the ground and dozes off. Soon, some tiny creatures appear in the restaurant looking for sugar. They pass across Peng's face and one of them falls into his mouth, and he unconsciously swallows it. In the morning, Nai walks into the restaurant and sees Peng. She labels him a thief and bans him from entering the restaurant, and he leaves. Outside, Peng starts putting up a strange attitude. He breaks into stores and steals candies and sweets. His friends run after him and catch him, and Everest tries to tell them that he ate something. Peng acts violently toward his friends, and Jin scans him with his glasses and notices the strange creature inside of him. They take him to the rooftop and tie him as he plays the violin, trying to help him. She later comes up with an idea on how to get Peng to throw up the creature. She got this idea from her grandma. They feed Peng with this plant and he plays her violin and orders the creature to come out from her friend, and it does. They later realize that it was an ancient creature used by Mr. Long the candy maker to make his sweets. These creatures clive sugar, so he and Everest grow a sugar tree for them and take their sprinkles to Nai Nai to add to her candies. It is the day of Jin's white coat ceremony as a doctor, and he's so excited about it. He receives his coat, which was delivered to him by his school with instructions not to wear it until it's time for the ceremony. But Jin doesn't listen and puts on the coat and steps out into the streets. Along the road, people admire him, and in the restaurant, Peng's sauce almost stained the coat, so he thinks about taking it off. He and his friends head to the rooftop where he's met with a strange animal that smears his coat with its green saliva. Jin is devastated as his ceremony is being held in 3 hours, so he rushes out to find a way to clean the coat. The creature tries to follow Jin but is obstructed by Yi, who tries to be friends with it. She introduces herself to it, and the creature later reveals that its name is Morty. Outside, Jin runs along the road to find where to clean off the stain on his coat, and while running, he receives a call from his school informing him of the ceremony. While rushing, he notices that he is gradually turning invisible. He goes to a mirror and watches himself completely disappear. He becomes scared and runs back to the rooftop, where he and his friends wonder about where his location. He explains that the saliva from Morty turned him invisible and goes into the cool room to place a call to Mr. Brutish so he could help him. Unfortunately, Mr. Burnish doesn't know how to send him back to normal after conducting so many tests. Jin is frustrated. He soon receives a call from his mother informing him that his family has arrived at his school for the ceremony, and Jin runs out to figure out what to do. He makes so many attempts to make the creature like her, but it doesn't, and she also doesn't like the sound of her violin as it makes it nauseous. Sad, she leaves the creature with Peng and Everest, who try to keep it company. Soon, Everest notices that the creature isn't cooperating so much with him and that he isn't used to doing things without his friends. He then goes into the house and meets Jin and Yi, scolding them for being too focused on themselves and forgetting that there is a creature who needs their help. They both give it a thought and return to the rooftop, and they see that Morty has fallen ill. Jin scans it and sees smaller creatures inside its stomach. Morty is a female and she's pregnant. It is also time for Jin's ceremony, so he says his oath and gently delivers Morty of her babies. They later realize that Morty followed Jin because she knew he was a doctor, as she wanted to be delivered her babies. He and Peng magically grow a garden around the babies, and Jin plays with them.